Hey everybody, Annette here, also known as Grandma D. I'm so happy that you're back to visit my channel. Today we are going to start, finally, our first series of adult classic books. We are going to read the first chapter of Tom Sawyer. If you have never read this book, it is an absolute classic written by Mark Twain and has a lot of adventure and twists and turns, and I am really sure that you are going to just love it. And I hope that you're all tucked in with a blanket and your favorite drink, or you're sitting in your chair relaxed with your device in front of you, or you've got the phone propped up or your tablet as you're cooking or cleaning or doing whatever you like to do. Personally, I like to listen as I sew. So whatever you're doing, without any further ado, we are going to jump right in tonight and read the first chapter of the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. This is the cover page on the inside. And my understanding is the entire book has hand-drawn artistry throughout the book. We're going to start with the preface tonight. Most of the adventures recorded in this book really occurred. One or two were experiences of my own. The rest, those of boys who were schoolmates of mine. Huck Finn is drawn from life. Tom Sawyer also, but not from an individual. He is a combination of the characteristics of three boys whom I knew, and therefore belongs to the composite order of architecture. The odd superstitions touched upon were all prevalent among children and slaves in the West at the period of this story, and is to say 30 or 40 years ago at the writing of this book. Although my book is intended mainly for the entertainment of boys and girls, I hope it will not be shunned by men and women on that account, for part of my plan has been to try to pleasantly remind adults of what they once were themselves, and how they felt and thought and talked, and what a queer enterprise they sometimes engaged in. The author, Hartford, 1876. Now we'll move on to chapter 1. Here's the artist work on chapter 1. Isn't that lovely? All looks like it's all hand-drawn. You, Tom. Aunt Polly decides upon her duty. Tom practices music. The challenge, a private entrance. Tom! No answer. Tom! No answer. What's gone with that boy, I wonder? You, Tom? No answer. The old lady pulled her spectacles down and looked over them about the room. She then put them up and looked out under them. She seldom or never looked through them for so small a thing as a boy. They were her state pair, the pride of her heart, and were built for style, not service. She could have seen through a pair of stove lids just as well. She looked perplexed for a moment, and then said, not fiercely, but still loud enough for the furniture to hear, "Well, I lay if I get hold of you, I'll—" She did not finish, for by this time she was bending down and punching under the bed with the broom, and so she needed breath to punctuate the punches with. She reassured nothing but the cat. I never did see the beat of that boy. She went to open the door and stood in it and looked out among the tomato vines and gypsum weeds that constituted the garden. No Tom. So she lifted up her voice at an angle calculated for distance and shouted, "You, Tom!" There was a slight noise behind her, and she turned just in time to seize a small boy by the slack of his roundabout and arrest his flight. There, I might have thought of that closet. What you been doing in there? Nothing. Nothing? Look at your hands and look at your mouth. What is that truck? I don't know, Aunt. Well, I know. It's jam. That's what it is. 40 times I've said, if you didn't let that jam alone, I'd skin you. Hand me that switch. The switch hovered in the air. The peril was desperate. My, look behind you, Aunt. The old lady whirled around and snatched her skirts out of danger. The lad fled on the instant, scrambled up the high board fence, and disappeared over it. His Aunt Polly stood surprised a moment, then broke into a gentle laugh. Hang the boy. Can't I never learn anything? Ain't he played me tricks enough like that for me to be looking out for him by this time? But old fools is the biggest fools there is. Can't learn an old dog new tricks, as the saying is. But my goodness, he never plays them alike 2 days. And how is a body to know what's coming? He 'pears to know just how long he can torment me before I get my dander up, and he knows if he can make me out to put me off for a minute or make me laugh, it's all down again, and I can't hit him a lick. I ain't doing my duty by that boy, and that's the Lord's truth, goodness knows. Spare the rod and spile the child, as the good book says. I'm a laying up sin and suffering for us both, I know. He's full of the old scratch, but laws a me, he's my own dead sister's boy, poor thing. I ain't got the heart to lash him. Somehow, every time I let him off, my conscience does hurt me so, and every time I hit, my old heart most breaks. Well, well, man that is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble, as the scripture says. And I reckon it's so. He'll play hooky this evening, and I'll just be obliged to make him work tomorrow to punish him. It's mighty hard to make him work on Saturdays when all the boys is having holiday. But he hates work more than he hates anything else. And I've got to do some of my duty by him, or I'll be ruination of the child. Tom did play hooky, and he had a very good time. He got back home barely in season to help Jim, the small colored boy, saw next day's wood and split the kindlings before supper. At least he was there in time to tell his adventures to Jim, while Jim did 3/4 of the work. Tom's younger brother, or rather half-brother, Sid, was already through with his part of the work, picking up chips, for he was a quiet boy and had no adventurous, troublesome ways. While Tom was eating his supper and stealing sugar as opportunity offered, Aunt Polly asked him questions that were full of guile and very deep, for she wanted to trap him into damaging revealments. Like many other simple-hearted souls, it was her pet vanity to believe she was endowed with a talent for dark and mysterious diplomacy, and she loved to contemplate her most transparent devices as marvels of low cunning. She said, "Tom, it was middling warm in school, warn't it?" "Yes'm." "Powerful warm, warn't it?" "Yes'm." "Didn't you want to go in a swimming, Tom?" A bit of a scare shot through Tom, a touch of uncomfortable suspicion. He searched Aunt Polly's face, but it told him nothing. So he said, "No'm. Well, not very much." The old lady reached out her hand, felt Tom's shirt, and said, "But you ain't too warm now, though." It flattered her to reflect that she had discovered that the shirt was dry without anybody knowing that was what she had in her mind. But in spite of her, Tom knew where the wind lay now, so he forestalled what might be the next move. "Some of us pumped on our heads. Mine's damp yet. See?" Aunt Polly was vexed to think she had overlooked that a bit of circumstantial evidence and a missed trick. Then she had a new inspiration. "Tom, you didn't have to undo your shirt collar where I sewed it to pump on your head, did you? Unbutton your shirt jacket." The trouble vanished out of Tom's face. He opened his jacket. His shirt collar was securely sewed. "Brother! Well, go 'long with you. I'd made sure you'd played hooky and been a-swimming, but I forgive ye, Tom. I reckon you're a kind of a signed cat, as the saying is. Better'n you look this time." She was half sorry her sagacity had miscarried, and half glad that Tom had stumbled into obedient conduct for once. But Sidney said, "Well now, if I didn't think you sewed his collar with white thread, but it's black." "Why, I did sew it with white, Tom." But Tom did not wait for the rest. As he went out the door, he said, "Siddy, I'll lick you for that." In a safe place, Tom examined 2 large needles which were thrust into the lapels of his jacket and had thread bound them. One needle carried white thread, the other black. He said she'd never noticed if it hadn't been for Sid. Confound it, sometimes she sews it with white and sometimes she sews it with black. I wish to gimme she'd stick to one or to udder. I can't keep the run of 'em, but I bet you I'd lam Sid for that. I'll learn him. He's not the model boy of the village. He knew the model boy very well, though, and loathed him. Within 2 minutes, or even less, he had forgotten all of his troubles. Not because his troubles were one whit less heavy and bitter to him than a man's are to a man, but because a new and powerful interest bore them down and drove them out of his mind for a time. Just as men's misfortunes are forgotten in the excitement of new enterprises. This new interest was a valued novelty in whistling, which he had just acquired from a Negro, and he was suffering to practice it undisturbed. It consisted in a particular bird-like turn, a sort of liquid warble, produced by touching the tongue to the roof of the mouth at short intervals in the midst of the music. The reader probably remembers how to do it, if he has ever been a boy. Diligence and attention soon gave him the knack of it, and he strode down the street with his mouth full of harmony and his soul full of gratitude. He felt much of an astronomer who has discovered a new planet. No doubt, as far as strong, deep, unloyal pleasure is concerned, the advantage was with the boy, not the astronomer. The summer evenings were long. It was not dark yet. Presently, Tom checked his whistle. A stranger was before him, a boy a shade larger than himself. A newcomer of any age or either sex was an impressive curiosity in the poor little shabby village of St. Petersburg. This boy was well dressed, too. Well dressed on a weekday. This was simply astounding. His cap was a dainty thing. His clothes, buttoned, blue cloth roundabout, was new and natty, and so were his pantaloons. He had shoes on, and it was only Friday. He even wore a necktie, a bright bit of ribbon. He had a certified air about him that ate into Tom's vitals. The more Tom stared at the splendid marvel, the higher he turned up his nose at his finery, and the shabbier and shabbier his own outfit seemed him to grow. Neither boy spoke. If one moved, the other moved, but only sideways in a circle. They kept face to face and eye to eye all the time. Finally, Tom said, "I can lick you." "I'd like to see you try it." "Well, I can do it." "No, you can't either." "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "I can." "You can't." Can't. An uncomfortable pause. Then Tom said, "What's your name?" "'Tisn't any of your business, maybe." "Well, I'll make it my business." "Well, why don't you? If you say much, I will." "Much. There now." "Oh, you think you're mighty smart, don't you? I could lick you with one hand tied behind me if I wanted to." "Well, why don't you do it? You say you can do it." "Well, I will, if you fool with me." "Oh, yes, I've seen whole families in the same fix." "Smarty, you think you're some. Now, don't you? Oh, what a hat!" "You can lump that hat if you don't like it. I dare you to knock it off. If anybody that'll take a dare will suck eggs." "You're a liar." "You're another. You're a fighting liar, and dash take it up." "Aw, take a walk." "Say, if you give me much more of your sass, I'll take and bounce a rock off in your head." "Of course you will." "Well, I will." "Well, why don't you do it then? What do you keep saying you will for? Why don't you do it?" "It's because you're afraid." "I ain't afraid." "You are." "I ain't." "You are." Another pause, and more eyeing and siding around each other. Presently, they were shoulder to shoulder. Tom said, "Get away from here. Go away yourself." "I won't." "I won't either." So they stood each with a foot placed at an angle as a brace, and both shoving with might and main, and glowering at each other with hate. But neither could get an advantage. After struggling till both were hot and flush, each relaxed his strain with watchful caution. And Tom said, "You're a coward and a pup. I'll tell my big brother on you, and he can thrash you with his little finger. I'll make him do it, too." "What do I care for your big brother? I've got a brother that's bigger than he is. And what's more, I can throw him over that fence, too." Both brothers were imaginary. "That's a lie." "You're saying, so don't make it so." Tom drew a line in the dust with his big toe and said, "I dare you to step over that, and I'll lick you till you can't stand up. Anybody that'll take a dare will steal sheep." The new boy stepped over it promptly and said, "Now you said you'd do it. Now let's see you do it. Don't you crowd me now. You better look out." "Well, you said you'd do it. Why don't you do it?" "By jingo, for 2 cents I will do it." The new boy took out 2 broad coppers out of his pocket and held them out with derision. Tom struck them to the ground. In an instant, both boys were rolling and tumbling in the dirt, gripping together like cats, and for the space of a minute, they tugged and tore at each other's hair and clothes, punched and scratched each other's noses, and covered themselves with dust and glory. Presently, the confusion took form, and through the fog of the battle, Tom appeared, seated astride the new boy and pounding him with his fists. "Holler 'nuff," he said. The boy only struggled to free himself. He was crying mainly from rage. "Holler 'nuff," and the pounding went on. At last the stranger got out a smothered "'Nuff." Tom let him up and said, "Now that'll learn you. Better look out for who you're fooling with next time." The new boy went off, brushing the dust off his clothes, sobbing, sniffling, and occasionally looking back and shaking his head and threatening he would do to Tom the next time he caught him out. To which Tom responded with jeers and started off in a high feather. And as soon as his back was turned, the new boy snatched up a stone, threw it, and hit him between the shoulders, and then turned tail and ran like an antelope. Tom chased the traitor home and thus found out where he lived. Then he held a position at the gate for some time, daring the enemy to come outside. But the enemy only made faces at him through the window and declined. At last the enemy's mother appeared and called Tom a bad, vicious, vulgar child and ordered him away. So he went away, but he said, lowered, to lay for that boy. He got home pretty late that night, and when he climbed cautiously in at the window, he uncovered an ambuscule in the person of his aunt. When she saw the state of his clothes were in, her resolution to turn his Saturday holiday into captivity at hard labor became adamant in its firmness. Uh-oh. Sounds like Tom's in big trouble. Sounds like he got into quite a fight. Spouted himself off a little too much. Well, that is the end of chapter 1. That was so exciting to read. It's very interesting how the language was so different back then. As I read, it was difficult for me at times to recite what my eyes were seeing. Reading old classic stories is so interesting. And I hope that you will continue with us next time when we read chapter 2 of Tom Sawyer. Strong temptations, strategic movements, the innocents beguiled. So that's it for tonight. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, chapter 1. And we will see you next time for chapter 2. So this is Grandma D saying I hope you have a wonderful night tonight and a better day tomorrow. And know that I think about you, I love you, and I care about you. And I hope that you will subscribe to my channel, like this video, and click that notification bell so that you will know the next time we read chapter 2 of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So this is Grandma D saying, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye for now.